Welcome to the group discussion by the World Federation of Theosophists on practical occultism. We'll start with 2 minutes of silence. Okay, thank you for that. And then we come to our first slide for discussion here. I'll go ahead and read these first two. 28. In the East, the spirit of non-separateness is inculcated as steadily from childhood up, as in the West, the spirit of rivalry. Personal ambition, personal feelings and desires are not encouraged to grow so rampant there. When the soil is naturally good, it is cultivated in the right way, and the child grows into a man in whom the habit of subordination of one's lower to one's higher self is strong and powerful.
Amazing.
Yeah, and this was written, what, 100 something years ago, when maybe back then in the East, uh, this was true, that personal ambition and the rampant lower self wasn't quite as strong. But I think now in the 21st century, East and West has gotten kind of fuzzy, and we both influenced each other quite a lot. And I don't know, at least in my own life, on the trips to China that I've been to, it looks pretty much the same there as it does here, which is like the Eastern East China, they're got just as much ambition, and the lower self is as rampant there as it seems to be in my own home country of the United States, uh, which is maybe good and bad. We're all in this together, right? I suppose.
Maybe, sorry, America, go ahead.
I was thinking there's probably it's still true that the personal ambition and personal feelings and desires are not encouraged so much to grow there as it is here. So I think you're right in that sense that it the East in many ways are like looking and trying to follow the West, especially the first world countries, but I think it is still kind of less. And when the soil is naturally good, it is cultivated in the right way, and the child grows into a man in whom the habit of subordination of one's lower to one's higher self is strong and powerful. This is like very, very beautiful. I remember I recently read this quote from Blavatsky, Collective Writings, Volume 10. It says something like that it is no worth of blaming man who is like sick because he's been born in the society whose everybody is sick. Instead, you should it's the same as being in a dark room and blaming the room that it is dark. You should just take quietly a lamp and put it on or something like that. So also we can say that it is nice and good that when the soil is proper, but this is like the question where we should ask ourselves how to make this soil better than it is right now. Because this is the only thing I think that we can do.
And I think it's also about karma, about collective karma, right? So change it quickly like that is not realistic.
Yeah, and even this idea of subordination of the lower self to the higher, what does that even concretely look like? I mean, when I ask myself, what does that look like? I don't know how I would explain that to anybody. I don't know if anyone's ever thought about that. What does it look like and you yourself, when you try to subordinate your lower self to the higher, how does that come across?
I think overall it's you have less thoughts and concerns about yourself, and more of your energy goes to natural well-being of all. Yeah.
Yeah, so probably the changes in the area of motivation mostly.
Are there any more thoughts for 28 and 29? And 30, 31. Would anyone want to read these two?
I can read it. Okay, so 30. Let those who complain that they have learned little in the Theosophical Society lay to heart the words written in an article in the Path. The key in each degree is the aspirant himself. And 31. How grand and true appears thus to the student of occultism who has commenced to realize some of the foregoing truths. The answer given by the Delphic oracle to all who came seeking after occult wisdom, words repeated and enforced again and again by the wise Socrates, man know thyself. What is foregoing? Seth, maybe you could explain.
Let me, who has commenced to realize some of the foregoing truths? Oh, foregoing means for is before, and then
Okay,
going.
before. Okay.
Yeah, so I think she's talking about number 30.
Okay.
And I've never had that feeling myself, but I've learned a little in the Theosophical Society, but I have heard of it as a trend in other countries, I think. Um, I've heard of that from other people that even they themselves feel that they're not getting a lot out of the TS. I don't know if anyone here's ever had that feeling or seen it.
Yeah, I met this kind of attitude, yes.
That reminds me, I think it was one American president who once says, if you know, you can tell me, but
John
who
Kennedy,
says
ask
that,
not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
yeah, exactly. I think it is even more true for the Theosophical Society. If it comes, the question started to rise, what it gives to me, what level are you? And if you start thinking, what can I do? Then, the answer never ends. Yeah. So thanks then.
Yeah. Yeah. So the little that I've seen this sentiment come across with other countries, I think it's because they look around at the theosophically famous people that are there, and they see these blatant contradictions in their lives where they do pretty selfish and just horrible things on their own time, and then come and speak about these higher truths for the TS. And I think that disparity makes them want to leave the TS. But personally, I've never felt that because I really, uh, when I look at these things happen, because they happen everywhere, it's just because we're all people, right? I mean, even if the majority of the people in the TS were doing stupid things that contradicted what the TS is all about, it wouldn't make me want to leave it. It would make me want to help it become what it's supposed to be because it doesn't have anything to do with, with these personalities, that these personalities are bound to fail.
I have thought the same thing, that what the Theosophical Society stands for, what I have read so far, it's like so beautiful. It is worth to dedicate your life for. I'm not sure if I'm able to dedicate all my life, but I know that this is like the aim to pursue. And at the same time, if those local groups are not, well, whatever happens, I'm sure I will stay as a member of the society. Yeah. So, and I always find something to do, that I'm sure. What and as much as I can try to help locally, but it is like it must be done wisely, uh, in a sense that people feel that this is, how to say, also that you do not make a lot of contradictions by the things you think that is good. Like, I don't know, maybe I get it more. But yes, I think it is so beautiful what it actually stands for.
Namaste to everyone. So good to see you. I have an idea with this, and I think that what is said here, that the key in each degree is the aspirant himself, and this idea of what it is in the Delphus Oracle, that the thing is to know ourselves, because if we know ourselves, we will know the gods and the universe. So I think this is the key. It resonates completely with me, because if one is honest with the seeking, and if we go in the direction of going inside of us and really trying to get into the deepest of who we are, then we find everything. So at the end, it's very important, I feel, to be focused in really getting to know ourselves, because that's the way always. I think this is what is expressed here, that at the end, we don't have to, like, if we go outside and try to just, for example, learn in this that says that okay, how much I'm learning from the Theosophical Society, we can go into going outside. I am saying it very simple. And like we can lose ourselves there if we are not always going in the direct way, which is getting to know who we are. So if the aspirant himself is always honest with the seeking, he will always, or her will always like find the lessons needed in the path. It will learn what it has to be learned, and that's evolution. So each one of us is in a stage of its own path. So the aspirant himself is the key, because there's no like place to lose oneself if one is really focused on getting to know thyself. And we can see this direction that Socrates points, because there's no way to lose ourselves, or to, as I was saying, like to, that's the idea. I'm a little bit sleepy. So
It's early in Central America right now. And what you're saying reminds me of a little bit what Scott was saying earlier about how the motivations, or how we can tell if it's the higher self or the lower self influencing us. And I don't know, it makes me think of maybe if we try hard enough, we can get to a point where we are aware of all of our motivations in daily life, and we can see what's pulling the strings behind the things that we do. And I think that even when we get to that point where typically anything we do, we can see why we want to do it, I think even then we don't know ourselves. Even then there's something deeper that's pulling the strings, even beneath these intellectual motivations that we have. I don't know. And that makes me just want to keep going deeper, because there's this part of us that's wordless, that's also, pulling the strings.
Yes. And I have another idea with this. Like, if we are really trying to get to know who we are, we must see in others. We must try to see beyond the personality. As you were saying, like, because also lives can appear in some way. Like, it can appear in some way, okay, that person is conducting in a way that may not make sense to me, and maybe goes out, for example, from some things that I consider that should be in that way, but at the end, really only that person knows. And there are some things that we can say, okay, this is not too much in the way, but at the end, like, the aspirant is himself the key, so that person is learning something. And I think that to really get everyone into this direction is very important, to try to do the exercise of always try to see beyond the personalities of us and of everyone.
Hello, everybody, also. And thank you all for your comments. I also feel that exactly this, following with Ximena, this inward approach, it requires responsibility and also freedom, because it means that each of us are different, and we cannot try to copy any model, because otherwise it would not be, no? And it's what we are, and for some reason the things that happens to us, no? We don't want to accept many times, and we don't want to accept other people either. We don't understand they are also going on their path, and it requires an exercise of I think, responsibility and a respect of this freedom. And I think the TS gives this freedom, and that's something which is very challenging, because that's why I feel also many people may feel a little disappointed, because I think either you have gone already a certain path, or whatever, in past lives, I don't know, where you have already seen, I don't know, been deceived by a dogma or a master or a religion, no? Or it's difficult to appreciate the priceless and uniqueness of this freedom, no? That the TS gives. And there may be more mistakes because there are no spiritual leader, there is no hierarchy. We may don't like somebody who, like Seth was saying, you know, maybe the way they act or the way they praise, but the TS is not obliging any of us to accept anything of that, no? On the contrary, it's telling us you are here on your own, no? And I remember now when I was reading this old diary leaves of Olcott, and they were found in a jar, and the spirit there, he was saying that they wouldn't expect the people to come like visitors or guests, no? They were owners of that place, each and every of the people coming, no? So I think it's a very, very unique thing. And yeah, we are all very, you know, we are raised in class, in a school, everybody's teaching us, telling us what we have to do. And then we are expecting that, no? And I think when we don't get that clear, the people get disappointed and would be frustrated.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Tatiana, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me? No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I'm just on the road. That's why my video is off. But yeah, I completely agree with what everyone else is saying. And I think that for me personally, when I started, I felt that it was a lot on my own to go after the teachings, to participate in the talks and things like that. That after I joined, I think maybe more of a community with you guys and with other people as well, I feel that I'm taking more away of the society. And I think that's quite important to have that sense of, you know, you're part of something and you can learn together, you can share experiences, and you can not only obtain that knowledge, you know, in a theoretical level, but also put in practice, like other people said. And yeah, in having that combination between learning something and seeing how life really is and trying to balance those two things can be a bit hard sometimes. And yeah, so I just think that yeah, it can be a lonely journey in the beginning, but having a community makes a huge difference, I think. But I've definitely taken a lot away from the society as well, as other people said.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's well said. Yeah, it's hard, I think, in the world we live in to find a group of people who are trying to look within themselves to find the way. And I don't know, just that we have this now, I think, is something kind of special. Even in the TS, it can be hard to find a group of people who genuinely want to look inside of themselves and figure things out. And I think having that community, like you said, really helps us delve deeper into ourselves, just seeing other people do it as well. Did anyone else have thoughts on 30 and 31?
I think in the Key to Theosophy, there is a question, what are the benefits to joining the TS? And HVB says that none except getting esoteric instructions and benefiting from mutual sympathy and support, if the original program is carried out, she says. So it's an interesting phrase, because I think we may conclude that if the original intention behind the TS is carried out, then people do benefit from mutual sympathy and support. And if it's not, then they don't. So it's like an indicator, because if the first object is brotherhood, then the good human relationship is essential as the first fundamental step, right, towards that. And that is, it is challenging. It is because we all are part of our environment. We have all sorts of difficulties that we face in life. And to bring something good into the group, you have to have certain mastery of yourself, of your mind, maybe of your emotions also, for that environment to benefit from your being there. and improve generally, and also to navigate the art of human relationship inside the TS to help this environment improve. But this is a treasure, right? Because it is also a consolation, a support, a friendship, all sorts of huge benefits come from that.
A really nice quote from the founder of the TS. It's well said. Thank you. 32 and 33, if anyone wanted to read.
I can read 32. There are not in the West half a dozen among the fervent hundreds who call themselves occultists, who have even an approximately correct idea of the nature of the science they seek to master. 33. With a few exceptions, they are all on the highway to sorcery. Let them restore some order in the chaos that reigns in their minds before they protest against this statement.
Wow.
Hmm.
So less than 6. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Less than 6. I mean, I'm thinking, have this number risen up in last 150 years? Hopefully a little bit. Hopefully a lot. But I mean, if that times ago it was like 6 people in West, England and Europe and America and everything together. This is like so little. And what do you think? Has the Theosophy given us a better idea what is the nature of the science, the nature of the occultism? Do you think we have a kind of better idea right now?
I think it's true that the New Age has become very large and direct result of the work the TS has done, so that these spiritual ideas are a lot more widespread than they used to be. Karma is a common word, which is directly because of the TS. But I feel there's probably still 6 or less people who understand what occultism is and how to do it. I mean, I'm not one of them, absolutely not one of them, because it's a science of the art of living, right? Of how to do everything within your life to serve the purpose of learning how to help the world around you. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's not a lot of people who are doing that. Okay, even all these people that are interested in spirituality, it's normally tied to self-help in some way or another, or it's not completely serious. They have ulterior motives, and that's okay. But I think this is probably still true that there's less than half a dozen.
What comes to my mind is that HVB wrote about Damadar when he was taken to the masters. She wrote something like, even if the whole work of the TS produced one adept, then it was all worth it. So that shows how exceptional this is probably. And also, yeah.
Yeah, and it shows the worth of one occultist if they're real and sincere.
Yeah.
How powerful of a force they are to help the world. All this effort in the TS is worth just one of those.
Something like that. I better address the quote itself, but that's my impression of that. And also, I think that like spiritual path, if spiritual path is accelerated evolution, which is difficult, but it can be in different degrees, right? More difficult, less difficult, but it's like accelerated experience that we get, and so we grow in an accelerated way. Then occultist is probably the one who really grows very rapidly. So in one measure of time, like in one life, they progress through the experience that they would have to incarnate many times to get, probably. If that's the case, then it's progressively more difficult the more serious the inspiration is, because this is accelerated growth.
Yeah, progressively difficult, said, while simultaneously they have progressively more hours to deal with that difficulty, right? Maybe offsets it and makes it worth it for that person who's advancing so rapidly.
Yeah.
I am thinking, I still hope that there are more than like 6 who have at least the right approximate idea what is the occultism is. I hope we got like a kind of idea, but probably not a very clear one. But also about the sorcery, what is like a sorcery? Like in Estonia, it was, if I remember correctly, translated as a black magic. So, and what is different of black magic and white magic? As I understand, it is only the motivation behind it. Do you want something for yourself, or somewhere close to you, or do you want something, a welfare for all? So, and so, like also said, in the beginning, it goes through that phase where people want things themselves, but like it should be that in this path where they get like more clearer idea what it is really about, they like kind of drop those things, and it gets also the things they are doing and putting their energy into are more like pure. And I think it is not, I don't know if it's possible to do like that. You have to go gradually, but it is like this where I am right now is so much better than I had like maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And hopefully in 10 or 50 years ago, I look back on this day and think, it was necessary to be there, but it wasn't enough, and now I'm in a better place. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point that at the time it doesn't feel like we're progressing much. If we look back over a decade or two, we can maybe see some progress.
I was thinking, what would be the factors that could lead to, well, there being more people, like true occultists that have the right concept and things like that. Well, it's very difficult for me to evaluate because, I need to know more about mentality and civilization to try to evaluate. But there is one factor that plays in our favor, I think, is that we have the 150 years of literature, of theosophical literature. So we can probably get some glimpse of the idea, whereas people in the West, during HPP time, because she was starting theosophically speaking from scratch, more or less, when she was going to the USA in 1875, trying to fix somehow and upgrade somehow the spiritualistic movement to offer the right philosophy, which would be the foundation beyond the phenomena that everyone was running around with. and which spiritualists didn't really like very much, apparently, this effort. But, well, it was effort and probably successful in some degree. But in any way, we have all these explanations, all this knowledge that we can assimilate and think about and develop understanding that people in the 19th century maybe didn't have, especially before the last quarter of that century.
Yes, I totally agree with that, because for me, when she says about the sorcery, and I can picture myself a little. I mean, I can picture a little that context, and in that moment exactly, all this knowledge was not there, and it was about, in one hand, religion and with the dogma, in other hand, this other esoteric knowledge known, like all the spiritism, no? Movements, and all the Rosicrucians and all the other secret societies in which they really played a magic. They played all these rituals, and they played all these other things, and many things go on there, which they have this ceiling, no? And we always learn this in the Theosophical text, that they say, I cannot quote you one specifically, but Clara quote, but I can't tell you exactly the chapter, but when she was explaining very simple this, no? All these things are psychic phenomena, and they have a ceiling, and it's nothing about that, no? I think also one of the reasons of bringing the TS to India was to be clear that this goes in a much higher path, no? Which is the spiritual path, which is not just the spiritist rituals or practice. Though Leadbeater and Ivesan have many texts, especially Leadbeater, on all the meaning of the rituals and what's really happening in the different planes with different rituals. So it's not exactly denying that, no? The third objective of the society is to discover the latent powers. So we are supposed to, to enter this path, no? It's just exactly the motivation you were all mentioning, and I think she's giving this very strong statement on this context. But then I think the knowledge is there now. How many adepts are nowadays? I was just thinking that maybe, I don't know, I have a hope, an idea, like Ximena says, come to the mind, that maybe, I don't know if it is maybe this era about the, particular people that suddenly super bright, no? But maybe there is like a common altogether a little, no? And if we sum the little you make and the little you make and the little you make, if suddenly we are 500 making a little, I don't know. I would like to ask the karma accountants if that somehow can balance the one person enlightened. No? So I think that's why also this, I don't know, this network thing could also have if we could make comments or updates to this, no? One the context and the other maybe this brotherhood.
It's also interesting that if everything exists in cycles, right? Then if there was time when there was no connection, like active open connection with the hierarchy, and then there was time when there was open active connection with the hierarchy through HPB, then again time will come when there will be no connection, and again there will be time when there is connection. So it progresses necessarily in cycles. So now we are living in the period where we are at least not aware about any open public like initiative like was in the last quarter of the 19th century. But the time will come that there will be again.
No, you mentioned how when HPV came around, there was no theosophical literature as we have it now to kind of guide people in the right way. And since then, you mentioned we can look at the history of the TS, and it makes me think that maybe that is a good exercise to look at the literature we have over the past 150-ish years and see how many occultists can we reasonably think came out of it. And I think there are some, like for instance, Jeffrey Hodson was probably a genuine occultist. In his writings, after he died, he wrote a lot about, I think, his interactions with the masters, right? These things, we typically shy away from mentioning them in public while we're alive because it easily degenerates into an ego trip. But this man had this connection and wrote about these things, and not until he was dead did it even come out. So I think he was probably a real occultist. And maybe there's more, and maybe Mary Kay's hope that there's more than six now is true. Maybe we could back that up in history. Did anyone have anything on 32 and 33?
I just wanted to say, you bring out this one person, but I was thinking on my own that, I don't know if it's true, but it seems to me that all the presidents and like of the society, I mean, and all the and the people who are getting and who are working many years on the society, I think they have at least this better kind of correct idea about occultism than I do.
I would
Like I
I would
think they are
personally,
closer. Yeah.
yeah. I was just gonna say I would personally challenge that. I think uh, because most of these positions in the TS, they're administrative positions. These people aren't elected uh, president because they have extremely high spiritual attainments, but because they're organized and can get things done, keep the society alive. I mean, I don't doubt that most of them are probably spiritually highly evolved, but I don't know. Just the position, someone having the position of this leader in the TS, I don't think it means they necessarily have any spiritual wisdom.
That is also very true. And sometimes, like you said, it is needed somebody in the first person must be something who is able to do something. But at the same time, the occultism is something that you do not announce to the world, you just live it. I think if I would have some glimpses of what it really is, this is not something that I will put on the bell and tell everybody. I think it is like inner journey. And like if I'm thinking about Rada Burnier and what kind of wonderful things she wrote, like regeneration of human and so on. So, and I'm thinking, and also Gina Rajadasha, I very much love this book of the first principles of Theosophy. And I think he also mentions there that he has some like visions or things. And I very much like how they took all the Theosophy together in this one piece. And I'm thinking, they must know something more. Would they call themselves a occultist? I do not know. And I wouldn't call myself even if I will be much closer to this, because it's like a name, or people are starting to think something, and it is like maybe it is easier for if you think in the name of your job, it is easier if you let everybody impression that you don't know, and then you are able to help much more.
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag. I mean, you got some people who, like you said, Red Rainier genuinely know what they're talking about, and of course we have other people who are doing it for ambition. But that's who we are as humanity right now. So, anything else for these two? All right, 34 and 35. If anyone was willing to read.
I can go for it. Um, 34. Let them first learn the true relation in which the occult sciences stand to occultism, and the difference between the two, and then feel wrathful if they still think themselves right. 35. Meanwhile, let them learn that occultism differs from magic and other secret sciences as the glorious sun does from the rushlight, as the immutable and immortal spirit of man, the reflection of the absolute, causeless and unknowable, all differs from the mortal clay, the human body.
And this, I was reading this morning, just to kind of prepare, and it's kind of fuzzy, or at least it was to me, which one of these she's saying is good, occult science or occultism. But a little later on in the book, she mentions it, and it's in the slides later too, that occultism is what we're supposed to be aiming towards. It's this art of living, of doing things for the right reasons to help. And the occult sciences are subservient to that and can be used for good or bad. And I think that's the point she's trying to make here.
I've been reading recently the Night Maya Tales, again by HPB, where she has a list of stories, and each story has some example of occult art. Very, very fascinating reading, really. But yeah, that's not all of that is white magic, to say the least.
Any other thoughts on these two?
I wanted to say also one thing that came, because I think this is very much on the line of what we were reading before, no, about the knowing the true meaning of occultism or getting into a path which is, and I feel that there is a big difference on, because even for us, how do we discern many times things we, and even within what we were saying, about sometimes the contradiction that we see on the people, or, I mean, the idea that there is this selfish and selfless path, and it comes just because by the true itself, the identification with the personality is very limited, no? So all these things that all these practices in which there is an I that is creating a power, it's always gonna be there, no? Whilst there is another motivation that you were saying, when it comes about an aspiration to approach to become one with the unity, no? An inner aspiration of unity, no? And then the I has to keep on slowly, I don't know if it's growing or disappearing, but there is no I, no? And I think that's also one key to this discern. And these practices, I think they have this I-ness, and maybe that's one of the things also that that's why it's the human body, and with all this lower, and then the spirit, no, the union.
I have an idea, and I think that is very interesting to try to understand what is the sun, like what the sun represents here. And I relate this with truth, like occultism is truth, if we see it here. So the sun here represents something that is autoluminous. It has the light. It is the light itself. It is immutable, so it doesn't change. It is immortal. It is absolute. It is everything. So here, what I understand is that occultism is really the essence, is really putting us, it's beyond everything is the truth. We would say because it's the sun. So all the different secret science and magic and all of that, it is like more in the layers. And if we want to go like to the origin, we must go to occultism. This is what I understand, because that's the sun. And I can relate this with the self also. For example, I think that is in the how can I say it now? Advaita Vedanta, yes. In Advaita Vedanta, like the characteristics of the self are these ones. It's immutable, autoluminous, absolute, all of this. I'm not saying in the exact way now, but I can relate it completely. So, yes, what I understand is that occultism is the sun, so it's the origin and brings the light by its own. So, I will also want to know, like, where can I learn more about the definitions that HPV gave of occultism? Like, because I imagine that like how HPV define occultism again and again. And if we could have, like, it will be interesting to also know, like different definitions of occultism by persons inside the TS and try to get into the essence of all of them. It is an exercise that I would like to do, for example, and also to try to go to understand it more.
Yeah, maybe Svat here knows more what HPV said about occultism. All I know really is what you said in this book. I haven't studied too extensively. And I think Pablo Sinder would know a lot about all across the TS what people have said about occultism.
Well, it's a kind of interesting because I've been using this term and for a long time, but to give a definition is a little challenging. And I would also like to know more explicitly what is meant by it, actually. I have like a compilation. It's on Theopedia site in Russian. There may be some compilation in English also. And yeah, well, there is this program called TS Classics. I think it's done by Vikauchin, if I'm not mistaken, which is like a search engine for all the main works of HPB. So you type in a word and you have links to the text. So that is a very convenient way of looking for quotes, because quotes can promote our own thinking a lot. Very useful for preparing talks, especially, I would say. But well, as I understand now, it's the true knowledge, like that is superior to what human beings have at the moment. That's why it's called occult, because occult means hidden or secret. And it's not hidden or secret because somebody hid it, but because our level of development doesn't allow us to grasp it really. So if you make some steps in that direction, you become an occultist, the carrier of this knowledge. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that it can be also white and black, and the difference again is the same motivation is the difference. But generally, when HPB speaks about occultism, it's my impression that she means white occultism, like white adeptship and these things. And then the sine qua non, the real like condition for that is full abandonment of self, no selfishness, like not one trace, not one thought. Everything is completely given for the well-being of all, of everyone. then this is the right motivation to progress in occultism, especially in practical occultism, because theoretical occultism is what we are doing now, more or less, and at our level, we are trying to understand these things, thinking about it. And that's safe. And that's actually what is given to us in terms of literature, right? So we can progress even in the West. We don't have the conditions to practice occultism because it's too dangerous. We don't have the moral, like, supreme height of yet. And as Merkel, I think, was wonderfully saying, if a person is born in the land of the ill people, then why blame this person, right? So, but anyway, what we can do, we can study it, and that is already something. And that's actually a lot when we really understand these things. Even it changes us. It changes us. It is a way to progress. Like jnana yoga for Western student is still something very useful, I think.
Yeah, I think there's this idea that the higher thoughts in our higher mind that we can gather, they stick with us from lifetime to lifetime. So even thinking about these things like you're saying, that'll probably stay with us in our next life.
I just wanted to add one more thing, if it's okay. What Svetislav said, the carrier of this wisdom or something like that, and it stuck to me that, like you said, what we are right now doing, we are investigating this truth in theoretical way, but how to become a carrier of this knowledge? I think it is when it becomes part of your life experience, when you know it for first hand, like so I think I was thinking also about the occultism, that we are given so much like things, so many things are said out so very directly. It is now to not just jump over it, but I don't know, try to be the carrier of this knowledge. Yeah.
Thank you. Did anyone else have thoughts before we go to the last 2 minutes of silence?
I have an idea.
Yeah.
And about Medike was saying that it must be an experience. And I think this is the key. So if we really, if we relate what we were looking before, that HPV said that each of us is the key. If the seeking is honest, then the direction is an inward direction. And then it becomes experience for each of us. And we discover this sun. And also, I have a question for you. And for the occultism term, do you think that it can also mean that it's occult for each of us? Because it's something that goes beyond the physical, beyond the personality. It is something that is totally, it can be at the beginning totally occult for each human being. This truth that we're saying, because it's totally spiritual. So it could be also this way, the term pointing to the direction that is something beyond all the forms, that is so occult, but is the sun, so it's the most important. This is the idea.
Yeah, no, if you're asking all of us, I think so. As we go deep enough, it's different for each one of us. But I think until we get to that point where we're ready to dive off in the deep end, there's a set of practices that that essentially, if anyone follows, they'll get to that point where they can then dive off into something that's different for everyone. But I think the beginning stages are all the same, and that's why it's kind of a science.
And I would also suggest that maybe it's the knowledge that comes not from physical senses, not from the eyes, not from the ears, something that you know from a different source inside yourself. And it's not like a mystical inspiration when you have a vision and you may interpret it this way or that way, or it is a creative inspiration, but as an actual knowledge of how things are, which is not accessible for us through our 5 physical senses. Maybe that's also an occult perception and the source of occult knowledge, perhaps. It comes from inner self, maybe. And I will add that all sincere Theosophists have a smell of this. If they don't actually have a big experience, they have a smell of this, and this smell will never allow them to stop. Because if you have the smell of it, you will always go for it. Always. That seems so.
It's a good way to end. Thank you. All right. And then our last 2 minutes of silence. It was good to see you all. It's good to spend time with all of you. Thank you for that. The next meeting is in 3 weeks, not 2, because there's the in-person gathering in the Himalayas in India. So I hope I'll see you all again in 3 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Thank you to everyone. So good to see you.
Yes, thank you all.
Bye-bye.